Hi BookTube, this is Lindsay from Lindsay Reads. Today I'm going to talk about some of the books I've finished in the second part of January. I did a video last week on the books I finished in the first part of January, and that was like for the 2 weeks. But this time I'm going to talk about just the 1 week worth of books plus like a day or two from the week before that I hadn't included in that last wrap up, because I read so many books that I thought it'd be better for me to do weekly wrap-ups so I don't get so overwhelmed, and it'd be a shorter video so you're not overwhelmed with like a hour-long video or something on the books I've completed. And then at the end of the month I was thinking of doing a wrap-up, like the statistics and just like a brief overview of the month. So yeah, that's what I'm doing from this point forward. I'll just do weekly wrap-ups. So the first book I completed on January 17th is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Let me get a picture of this one. And this is about Frances and a teenage girl. It's a YA book. She is in school studying really hard. She's just focusing on getting, all A's to get into a prestigious university. But on the side, her one relief in life is art. She's doing like fan art for this podcast. And it turns out that her friend, her acquaintance, her neighbor, is the one running this podcast. And so it's like their relationship, their friendship that they form, and what goes on from there. How she is dealing with her keeping up her good grades, and like wanting to actually have fun with what she's doing with her time, like with the art. So that's that book. The next book is a nonfiction history book. It's kind of like a biography of one person, John Wesley Powell's. Here's the cover. As you can see on the cover, it's the Grand Canyon. So it's the promise of the Grand Canyon, John Wesley Powell's perilous journey and his vision for the American West. And this is by John F. Ross, and it was published in 2018. And this, it's a biography of John Wesley Powell, but it's also the whole discovery of the Grand Canyon, which that was the first. It's broken into two parts. And the first part, is like his Powell's beginnings in life, and then how he ends up being like a naturalist and wanting to learn more about the environment. And then at his time, the Grand Canyon wasn't mapped. It wasn't really known about, besides like, the Native Americans, and a couple of people had taken perilous journeys through bits and parts around the Grand Canyon, but no one had actually like documented, like a scientist hadn't gone in and explored it. So he was like the first explorer for that area, and his impressions, from what we kind of take for granted as like a tourist site, his impressions of, something that hadn't been seen, like, America at the time, most people were living, like in the east part, like, east of the Mississippi River, basically. And so the West was like this foreign land, compared to like, the tree coverage and everything, compared to this desert. And so the book, his journey, like this like riveting tale, it was so like fast-paced, good to read, because they're just taking these, boats that were predominantly just used on lakes, even like the Great Lakes, but it hadn't been really tested in these like white water rapids. And, now we have like these different levels of, what the rapids would be. We know what to expect, but he had no idea what was coming. So it's just crazy, like, him deciding to do this, and how he like roped in this, this whole crew of people, who were brave, who just wanted the adventure. And so if you want a riveting read about history, then pick this one up. The next book is a romance for like the Christmas season. It's Season of Wonder by Rayanne Thane. And here's the cover, a nice Christmassy, wintry read. And this is about Danny Capelli. And I want to see when it's published. I didn't mention that. It was published in 2018. Okay. So it's about Danny Capelli, who is new to the area. She was living in like the New York and Boston area, and so she has just come to Haven Point, and she is to become a veterinary, works at a veterinary clinic, and her new start in life because her ex-husband was convicted of some crimes, and so she's trying to make a new life away, make a new life for her kids. They're not like tainted by the father's doings, and so she is kind of like clashing with the veterinary clinic's manager's son, who wants to form a relationship with her, but she's really wary of it, especially considering her past with this criminal. She doesn't feel like she made the best choice in men before, and so she wants to like stay away from them. But of course, the male character eases his way in with becoming friends with the daughters. Danny Capelli has some 2 kids, and it's like it's a really nice, sweet story, perfect for the Christmas time. And this next one, going back to nonfiction, is by Ben Goldfarb, and it was published in 2018 as well. And this one is a really cute cover, I think, with the beaver. It's Eager, The Surprising Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter. And this was a good time for me to read it because, of course, with beavers, we're talking about dams, and it mentions, not only about the beavers and, their lifestyle and, like the anatomy of them, but it's also, their impact and how we aren't always utilizing them, as we should be. And so it mentions like, our human-made dams that we have created and how there are often, and a surprising amount of them are crumbling. They're not up to standards. And so just as I was finishing this book, I think like the very next day, the dam collapsed in Brazil. And it also mentioned the Oroville collapse that happened, I think, a year or 2 ago. And that's right near where I'm at. And so it was a really interesting read, reading about these dams, how they could possibly collapse. And then the next day, reading about a dam that's collapsed. And but besides like current events, the book was really good. It was really well written. I've always like loved reading about certain animals. I mean, not certain animals, but I like finding out about as many animals as I can. So I like books that focus on one particular animal or one, category of animals. And so I have never read a book about beavers, and this, eased me into learning about these creatures. I didn't even know they were rodents. Like, so it's very informative. He talks about, he goes to all these different places in America, mostly in the West, because that's, where they're kind of needed, because in the East, it rains a lot. But, and so we have this, replenishing water. But in the West, it dries up, especially, over the summertime. And so talking about how, in the past, before American West was colonized, the impact beavers had, and, how it created these meadows and, these streams, like these swamps that would, replenish the area, keep the grasses greener longer. And so now it's talking about how, the landscape has changed due to humans and, them like eliminating, these evil rodents, or whatever they would say, especially with the cattle, how, this grass and, this area is for the cattle. It isn't for the beavers. And so they wanted to keep them out. They consider them a nuisance. And so he interviews people, and he's talking with farmers, he's talking with politicians, on both sides of the battle. And he's talking with, beaver advocates, and then he's talking with cattlemen, farmers who do not want beavers in their area. And, he goes into detail on, when they do, let these beavers back in, when they're talked into it, how they can make a really positive impact on the area, but then there's, of course, there's always people who won't want to consider it. But I think, everyone who especially lives in the West should read this book, because it maybe makes you look at them in a new light. Okay, so speaking of animals, the next book I completed, let's see, it was published in 1994, and it's, let's see if we get a picture. it's a black picture, so it's kind of hard to see, but it's a raven on the cover. And it's Mind of the Raven, Investigations and Adventures with Wolf Birds. And wolf birds, as you can see, ravens are carnivores. And so it's about Heinrich becoming fascinating with ravens. And so he decides to raise some ravens and just, observe their life, their growth from, chicks to adults. And, we're finding out as he's finding out. So we know we're like led in the investigation along with him. And it was really interesting. Like, we think, oh, let me just try this out. Let me just, test this and see. And so it was really interesting to read his experiments that he has going on with these ravens. It's not just his experiments that he's talking about. We also get into the history and the anatomy of ravens. So if you like birds, check this one out. Okay, so this next one is a fantasy YA. It's part of the Wayward Children series. It's a really pretty, colorful cover. And this one is Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shannon McGuire. It was published in 2018. And this is about, well, I want to mention for this, it's a third book in a series. But from what I can see, you don't have to have read, them in order to really understand the story. Because I feel like, especially like the two and the third one I've read, they're kind of like individual stories. But, you still will meet some of the same characters from the previous books. But anyway, so I think you could pick this one up if you haven't read the other two. But if you were interested, then you should read the other two as well. But in this one, the third book, there is a woman named Renee who kind of gets dumped into, crashes into the home. What's it called? See, the Eleanor West Home for Wayward Children. And she is on a mission to find her mother. And so she recruits some of the children who are living at the home. And what's cool about this book is, you're going to various planets, worlds, of some of these worlds you've heard about in the previous books. And so instead of, going to one world and, staying there, for this book it's really cool because you're hopping to different planets. And so it was a fun read. Okay, so this next one that I finished was published in 1865, so a big jump from 2018, and this is a classic, and it's Phineas Finn by Anthony Trollope, and this is a version. I read the Penguin Classic, and this is the second book in the Palliser series. I really liked how the book ended. I don't want to give anything away, but like, for me, reading Phineas, he could be annoying because I felt like he was getting lucky with his, career in life a little bit too much. So, but it still ended well. I liked how it ended. He was kind of like a ladies' man, I guess you would say. He, basically every woman he met, he fell in love with. And so it was a funny read, actually. It became more funny instead of annoying. Watching him and what he got up to, and sometimes you just roll your eyes at him and and some of the people he's dealing with. But I do plan on reading more of the Palliser series, and I know he has another book in this series, like Phineas Redo or something like that. I'll have to look more into that. So if you're into classics, you should try Trollope. So this last one is a children's book. And it's Betsy, Tacy by Maud Hart Lovelace. And I'm not going to mention too much about this book because I do plan, today I'm reading the second book, Betsy, Tacy, and Tib. And so after I finished the first one yesterday, and so after I finish the second one, then I plan on doing like a mini review, I guess you'd say, maybe tomorrow, once I've finished the two books, to kind of go along with the read-along that's happening. And I'll leave a link below to the 3 channels who are hosting the read-along. So, maybe you'd want to join in on the fun of reading the children's literature. So these are the books I've finished since I did the wrap-up last week to yesterday. And so next Sunday, I will do a wrap up from today, Sunday, to Saturday. So it'll be that chunk of time that I will be wrapping up each week. Let me know if you have read any of these books, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.